There is a question so old, so deeply woven into the fabric of human consciousness, that no civilization in recorded history has ever been able to ignore it. What happens when we die? It is the one mystery that modern science, for all its staggering achievements, splitting the atom, mapping the human genome, landing machines on distant planets, has never been able to answer with certainty. We have peered into the farthest corners of the known universe. We have decoded the building blocks of life itself. And yet, when the heart beats its last, when the breath fades and the eyes close, we simply do not know what comes next. Most cultures since the very dawn of civilization have refused to accept that death is the end. From the painted caves of prehistoric Europe to the towering temples of ancient Egypt, from the highlands of Tibet to the great cathedrals of medieval Europe, across every continent, every culture, every era of human history, the belief in some form of afterlife has endured. We know just enough about heaven to want to go there, and just enough about hell to be afraid. But this documentary asks a harder question, one that strikes at the very core of human morality. If there were no reward waiting for the righteous, no punishment awaiting the wicked, would we still choose to be good? Is faith in the afterlife the foundation of civilization itself? And is there, in the end, any final justice for us all? In the last half-century, modern medicine has done something remarkable and deeply unsettling. It has brought people back from the dead. Advanced resuscitation techniques, cardiac defibrillators, and intensive care technology have rescued thousands of men and women from the very threshold of death, and many of them have returned with stories. The experience has a name now, the near-death experience, or NDE. And while the details vary, certain images appear again and again with striking consistency across cultures, across faiths, across languages. A long, dark tunnel, a brilliant light, warm, total, overwhelming. The sense of floating free from one's own body, and the faces of loved ones, long gone, waiting at the threshold. For many who have lived through it, the NDE is nothing less than proof, personal, visceral, undeniable proof, that something survives the death of the body. That consciousness in some form continues. But not everyone agrees. Neurologists point to the oxygen-deprived brain as a powerful generator of hallucination. Some theologians, particularly in the Christian tradition, have warned that these experiences may not be divine at all, that the comforting tunnel of light, the beckoning figures, could be precisely the kind of deception a cunning adversary might engineer, leading souls gently, reassuringly, away from the truth. The quest to understand death is as old as civilization itself, and perhaps no culture pursued it with greater intensity or greater architectural ambition than the ancient Egyptians. More than 5,000 years ago, the people of the Nile built monuments that have endured longer than any other human construction on Earth. The pyramids were not merely tombs, they were launch pads, engines of resurrection. The dead pharaoh, entombed with everything he might need for eternity, would rise again and sail through the night sky, becoming one with the stars. But the Egyptian afterlife was not guaranteed. Every soul on the day of its death faced a reckoning. In the Hall of Two Truths, the deceased stood before the god Osiris and 42 divine judges. Their heart, the seat of their conscience, their guilt, their virtue, was placed on one side of a great golden scale. On the other side rested the feather of Ma'at, the feather of truth, of justice, of cosmic order. If the heart was heavy, burdened with corruption, cruelty, dishonesty, a terrible monster named Amit would devour it, and the soul would cease to exist forever. But if the heart balanced against the feather, if a life had been lived with integrity and compassion, the soul would pass into paradise, into the field of reeds where the Nile flowed eternally and the harvest never failed. It is perhaps the first concept of moral judgment in human history. Remarkably, the tradition that would eventually give the world its most elaborate visions of heaven and hell began with almost no concept of either. The earliest books of the Hebrew Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, contain no clear doctrine of a heavenly reward or an infernal punishment. When the ancient Israelites spoke of death, they spoke of Sheol, a dark, silent underworld, not of fire and torment, but of shadows and sleep. Rich and poor, righteous and wicked, all descended to the same grey twilight kingdom. All were equal in the dust. This was a faith rooted not in the hereafter, but the here and now. God's blessing was visible and tangible: long life, many children, fertile land, military victory. If you obeyed the covenant, the rains would come. If you strayed, the harvest would fail. Justice was immediate, justice was earthly, death was simply the end. But that theology would not survive the suffering that was coming. The demand for an afterlife was born, ultimately, from a cry of pain, from a question that the simple theology of earthly reward and punishment could not answer. Why do good people suffer? In the book of Job, one of the most anguished and philosophically sophisticated texts in all of ancient literature, a righteous man is stripped of everything: his wealth, his children, his health, while the wicked prosper around him undisturbed. Job cries out to God not for mercy, but for an explanation, for justice, for a reckoning. The answer he receives is, famously, no answer at all. Only the voice from the whirlwind. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? But the question Job asked could not be silenced, and by the time of the book of Daniel, written during a period of savage persecution when Jewish communities were being slaughtered for their faith, a startling new promise appeared in the text. The dead would rise, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. For the first time in the Hebrew tradition, the scales of justice would be balanced, not in this world, but in the next. And hell? Hell has a postcode. South of Jerusalem, in the valley of Hinnom, there is a real place. In the ancient world, it was a site of horror, a valley where, the scriptures record, pagan worshippers once sacrificed their own children in fire to the god Moloch. It was a place so defiled, so cursed, that it was later converted into the city's rubbish dump, a perpetually smoldering wasteland of ash and maggots and unquenchable fire. Its Hebrew name was Gehinnom, in Greek, Gehenna, and it became the word that Jesus of Nazareth would use when he spoke of a place of punishment beyond death. Not a metaphor, not a poem, a place so real, so viscerally horrifying, that his listeners would have known exactly what kind of existence he was describing. The New Testament transformed the Hebrew concept of Sheol into something far more dramatic and far more personal. Satan, who appears in the Hebrew Bible primarily as a member of God's divine court, a prosecuting attorney testing human loyalty, becomes in the New Testament the Prince of Darkness, the ruler of a shadow kingdom, the great adversary. And yet, scholars are quick to point out, the Christian vision of hell is more nuanced than popular culture suggests. The New Testament more often uses the word torment than the word torture. Hell, in this theological framework, is not primarily a place where God inflicts suffering. It is a place of profound absence, of separation from the divine love that sustains all existence. A place, one theologian has suggested, where people are simply allowed to do their own thing forever, to live out the logical conclusion of having chosen, throughout their lives, to turn away from God. The Book of Revelation, with its apocalyptic visions of cosmic warfare and final judgment, provides the ultimate destination, a lake of fire and sulfur into which death itself is finally cast. The second death, the end of all endings. In the 5th century, a brilliant and restless North African theologian named Augustine of Hippo would reshape Western Christianity's understanding of sin, grace, and the fate of souls. And his influence would echo through the next 15 centuries. Augustine had lived hard before his conversion. By his own account, a life consumed by intellectual arrogance and physical desire. He understood temptation from the inside, and when he turned to God, he turned with the ferocity of a man who understood exactly what he was turning away from. His theology was severe. Human beings were damaged at their root by original sin, the transgression of Adam and Eve in the garden. Without the saving grace of God, delivered through baptism, through faith, through the sacraments of the Church, no human soul could avoid damnation. The road to hell was wide, Augustine believed. The road to heaven was narrow and required divine help to walk. It was a theology of fear as much as of love, and it would cast a long shadow. But it was a poet, not a theologian, who gave Western civilization its most enduring and most detailed map of the afterlife. In the early 14th century, a Florentine exile named Dante Alighieri wrote a poem. He called it the Commedia, the comedy, because, unlike a tragedy, it ended well. We know it as the Divine Comedy, and its first canticle, the Inferno, remains the most influential description of hell ever written. Dante's hell is a vast, inverted cone driven deep into the earth. 9 concentric circles, each housing a specific category of sin, the punishments growing more terrible as the circles descend. At the top, the merely incontinent, the lustful, the gluttonous, the greedy, souls who loved good things too much, or in the wrong order. Deeper, the violent. Deeper still, the fraudulent, the treacherous. Those who used intelligence, the highest human gift, for the purpose of harm. And at the very bottom of the universe, at the absolute center of the earth, frozen to his waist in a lake of ice so cold it was formed by the beating of his own enormous wings, Satan. Not a fire lord, not a magnificent rebel, a weeping, mindless giant perpetually chewing on the bodies of history's 3 greatest traitors, Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Christ, and Brutus and Cassius, who betrayed Julius Caesar. It is a vision of absolute, frozen despair, and it has haunted the Western imagination ever since. As the medieval church grew in wealth and institutional power, it developed a concept that offered hope to millions and would eventually tear European Christianity apart. Purgatory, a third place between heaven and hell, not eternal damnation, but a temporary state of purification, a spiritual fire in which minor sins could be burned away, and souls that were good but imperfect could eventually be made ready for God's presence. The concept was genuinely comforting. It meant that the vast majority of ordinary people, not saints but not monsters either, had a path to salvation that didn't require perfection. And it meant that the living could help the dead. Through prayer, through Mass, through good works offered on behalf of departed souls. But the Church found something else in purgatory: revenue. Indulgences, certificates sold by church officials promising to reduce a soul's time in purgatory, became a vast and deeply corrupt industry. Buy your way to heaven. Buy your dead mother out of suffering. The logic was simple, the market was enormous, and the abuses were grotesque. In 1517, a German Augustinian monk named Martin Luther nailed 95 theses to the door of a church in Wittenberg, and the world changed. Luther's central argument was theological and uncompromising. Purgatory was an invention, a corruption, an insult to the sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross. Salvation could not be purchased. It could not be earned. It came through faith alone, through grace alone, through Scripture alone, and no pope, no bishop, no indulgence seller had any authority to say otherwise. The Protestant Reformation had begun, and with it, a permanent fracture in Western Christianity's vision of what awaits us after death. We have traveled a long way, from the weighing of hearts in ancient Egypt to the frozen circles of Dante's Inferno, from the silence of Sheol to the blinding light of the near-death experience, from the fires of Gehenna to the gates of the New Jerusalem. And we are no closer, scientifically, to a definitive answer. The instruments of modern science, the MRI scanner, the electroencephalogram, the particle accelerator, have given us extraordinary knowledge of the physical world. But consciousness remains mysterious. Death remains impenetrable. What we are, at our deepest level, and whether that thing survives the death of the body, these questions sit just beyond the reach of every method we have developed for knowing things. Perhaps that is why the beliefs endure, not because they have been proven, but because they answer something that empirical evidence cannot touch: the need for meaning, the need for justice, the need to believe that goodness matters, that the child who dies too soon is not simply extinguished, that the tyrant who lives in comfort is not simply unpunished, that love does not simply end. The Jewish tradition speaks not of clouds and harps, but of closeness to God, an intimacy with the divine presence that transcends physical existence. The Christian tradition speaks of resurrection, of a new Jerusalem descending from the sky, of all things made new. The Muslim tradition speaks of Jannah, gardens of extraordinary beauty, where the righteous are reunited with those they have loved. The Buddhist speaks of liberation from the cycle of suffering itself. Different maps, different languages, the same desperate, defiant, entirely human insistence that this, all of this, the love and the loss, the beauty and the cruelty, the mystery remains, the question stands unanswered. But perhaps that has always been the point. Perhaps it is precisely because we cannot know, because we must choose in the dark what we believe, that the answer matters so much. How we answer it shapes the world we build, the lives we lead, the way we treat the strangers we will never meet again. What happens when we die? We don't know. But the asking, the restless, ancient, irrepressible asking, may be the most human thing about us.